Ferguson, Staten Island, Cleveland, just a few places where in 2014 America was left to wonder about the psychological makeup of those charged with serving and protecting, wondering if police departments are doing a good enough job of ensuring the psychological makeup of men and women carrying a badge and a gun is what is necessary to not just do the job, but get it right as often as possible. Let's welcome to MidPoint. She is a member of the American Psychological Association and an expert in forensic evaluations. Dr. Jolie Silva joins us today. Doctor, thanks for being here.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for having me.
Doctor, that is, I think, where we need to begin right now, and that is the psychological nature of the job itself. It is a very stressful position. You have to make life and death situations in a split second, and many people now, and watching what's happened, they are concerned that police departments across the country simply aren't that worried about the psychological side. They're more worried about being able to hit a target and being able to hand out a citation, but they're not that worried about their psychological makeup. Is that a fair concern?
Well, across the country, police screenings are done by psychiatrists or psychologists and typically involve personality assessment. Some states require cognitive testing, intelligence testing, and a thorough clinical interview, which all of this put together should really be assessing for the emotional stability of these cops. But really, to accurately predict behavior is a very difficult thing that psychologists aren't necessarily so good at.
What is it that they need to be looking for? Let's take it from the base. You have an officer who comes in who wants to be a member of a force. You as a psychologist now, things that you have thought up, things that have worked for you in the past in other ways. What's one of the first few things that you must know off the bat to know to kind of set a guideline to where you're going?
Well, history of aggression is probably number one, and risk of violence. So an officer coming in with a history of aggression, which can be assessed through clinical interview or through psychological testing, may indicate that he is failing the test. Impulsivity is another issue. If you're going to carry a gun and you have impulse control problems, that's another red flag. Something else that is a little more rare would be psychosis, which we don't see very much. But that would be another reason why you would be reluctant to hand that person a badge.
All right, what's the tip-offs then? You have an officer sitting in front of you. She comes in, he comes in, they look good, they're in good physical condition, they pass all the written tests here. But what are the triggers that you as a psychologist are looking to see?
Well, that's one of the problems because psychologists sometimes don't do such a great job at detecting deceitfulness. Or they're not lie detectors, or we're not psychics. So a tip-off would be certain measures on the testing that doesn't look so great. But if they're passing the test with flying colors and they're having a great clinical interview and denying a history of violence, and the psychologist looks into outside resources like collaterals, family members, neighbors, past employment history, things like that, would be a clear indicator that there's a history of violence. That may tip the psychologist off. But some people may be able to pass with flying colors and still be at risk for acting aggressively on the streets.
In your opinion, are the psychologists that are looking at potential cops around the country right now, are they doing a good job? Are they prepared for what they're looking to do and the questions they need to ask?
Look, the psychologists are very well trained, and they only use empirically based stuff. And we do the best job that we possibly can forensically. But when it comes to the bottom line, we're not fortune tellers, and we can only use the tools that we have. I know that in New York, they use all of the top of the line instruments and everything like that. But there's only so much we could do as mental health professionals to predict behavior.
What about from the cops' perspective here? Because I've got an article in my hand from Criminology Careers, and it talks about psychological exams and screening for police officers. It gives a long list of things that the officers should be waiting to hear from the psychologist, such as impulse control, general intelligence, judgment, reasonable courage, honesty, integrity. It's a long list of things. And I'm not trying to besmirch cops because I got to tell you something. I'm a big fan of law enforcement. I have a lot of friends who are. I back them in many things that they do. But isn't it a little bit difficult sometimes if you're almost telling people what to prepare for, that maybe you're tipping them off? The person that might be looking to get through a test now knows maybe what they need to do in order to sneak by?
Well, here's the thing. In the clinical interview, the psychologist is asking questions. So yes, they can flat out lie. And the way a psychologist would detect if they were lying would be to see inconsistencies in their report. However, the psychological tests have validity scales, meaning that within the questions, they are picking up deceitfulness. So if the person answers repeatedly, I'm not impulsive, I've never done this, I've never done that, the test can pick up if they are trying to fake good, as we call it. Faking good is something that may show up as a red flag on one of these tests.
What would worry you more, the fact that an officer comes in, is looking to start the job, or the one who has been in for 10, 12, 15 years? And these are the people who face those stresses every single day. It would seem to me, at least, that these are the people that need to have psychological evaluations, maybe every 6 months, maybe every year, but more often than not, to protect them and to protect the general public.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. You know, something can happen to someone within 1 month even. So to repeat the test, I actually think that's a very good idea, maybe every year or something like that, given the amount of stressors. And a lot of police officers are faced with post-traumatic stress disorder from some of the stuff that they see. So to repeat that, sure, I think that's wonderful. It's time-consuming and it's costly. That's one of the problems.
All right, now you just hit on something right there. It's costly. Is it fair to say that from your perspective as a professional that this is something we need to focus on, that we need to stop shoveling off to the side here in light of all the things that happened last year, the different things that we see? We need to find a way. Maybe there's a way to take money from somewhere else, but this is an important facet that every law enforcement needs to look at, no matter if you're a staff of 2 or 2,000.
Yeah, you know, I would say that more research is needed in this area as well as other areas of psychology, and the process can only be improved.
Do you think that from what you have seen, the evaluation protocols that they're using right now for veteran officers is good enough?
It's a difficult question to answer because every state has a different protocol. So, you know, I don't know specifically what different states are doing, but I would hope that they're following APA ethical guidelines and doing the absolute best job that they can.
From what you know, do you see law enforcement agencies around the country paying more attention to this now in light of the last few years?
Yes, that seems to be happening. Yes.
When you see them, though, are you then helping any? Are you personally in contact with any of them, trying to help them?
No, not so much. I mean, I have colleagues who do the work. I've worked in the courts before, but I haven't personally done research as far as devising the protocols for the police screenings.
We will be talking about that as time goes on, and hopefully the police departments around the country are listening, and hopefully the cops are listening as well. It's important. Dr. Jolie Silva, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your expertise.
Thanks for having me, Ed.
Pleasure. There was a time when certain folks were oh so concerned that the shine was off the techno apple. Oh, how they worry about so little. Bulls, Bears, and Bucks right after the break.